So it's professor of consumer behavior, inventor of neuropricing, entrepreneur, author of The Invisible Game, The Secrets and the Science of Winning Minds and Winning Deals, husband and father of two wonderful little girls. Starbucks sold the respective coffee at that moment in time for around €1.80 in downtown Stuttgart, where we made those measures. So that means as a huge gap, people were willing to pay €2.40. That's the perceived value of that product. If I go to the retail store, my goal is to get the best deal for my family and myself. It's a very selfish thing, basically. But that professional buyer, he has the idea, get the best thing out for his company, but on top, he needs to have the best thing for his career.
Okay. What is one missed opportunity you wish you could have a second chance at?
Learning how to computer code at the age of 6.
Hello, fellows. Welcome to the next episode of Jagged with Just Ravi. Subscribe to my channel for conversations at the edge with thought leaders from the branding, marketing, and the business world. Conversations that ignite new ideas. Ideas with rough and sharp edges. Hi, Kai. So great to have you on my show.
Hello. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Kai, if I requested you to tweet your profile, what would you say?
So it's professor of consumer behavior, inventor of neuropricing, entrepreneur, author of The Invisible Game, The Secrets and the Science of Winning Minds and Winning Deals, husband and father of two wonderful little girls, and happy with my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Kai, now I'll start with this one study conducted in Germany, which figured that consumers of Starbucks were willing to pay much more than they actually were being made to pay. And that means that Starbucks was losing millions. And you've talked about how there's an optimal price locked in the brain called Goldilocks price, and how neuroscience can get a marketer to that price. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? So how does that happen? What is neuropricing? What is Goldilocks price?
Well, yeah, so that was a very exciting study that we ran. It goes basically back to my education. I studied neuroscience and psychology. And what you do there when you study that, one of the main things you do is you design experiments and you design studies to figure out what people really think, what they really do, and how they really feel. Now, fast forward, after my PhD in the US, I came back to Germany and worked at one of the leading international pricing consultancies. That was fun. I met really cool people. It was a fabulous time, and I learned a lot. However, there was one thing that kind of bothered me, and that was that, well, we use a lot of very cool and good math, but the data we got was basically coming from asking people. So one major thing you do when you do pricing consulting is, for example, figure out a launch price. At which price do you launch a new product? Or what's the added value of a specific service or of a specific feature of your product? And what we did was we asked people. Now, we identify the right target group. We identify what is the right population that would buy this. For example, in the consumer space, also in the medical space, which patients, or in the B2B space, what kind of buyers. But in the end, what we would do is we would ask people and say, well, it seems like you are a good the customer for this product. Well, at which price should we launch it? I'm simplifying a little bit. obviously, this is slightly more sophisticated. You're asking things like, would you buy at this price, at this price, at this price, and so forth. There's slight variation, but in the end, you're asking people to consciously tell you a price. And this is a kind of odd, because it's like what you learned in psychology in the first semester. If you want to know the truth about someone, don't ask them, because it's not that people are pathological liars, but they just really often don't know what they're going to do and what they really feel and what the motivation for the behavior is. So after 2 years in pricing consulting, I founded my own company. I founded a startup in which I combined my two worlds, brain research, neuroscience, and neuropsychology, with pricing consulting and marketing consulting. And I developed a brain scan algorithm, you could say, that measures perceived value on the brain. Now, this sounds a bit more esoteric than it really is. That brain scan device is the EEG. You may have seen these caps that measure what people call the brain waves, electrical fluctuations on the head. And these EEG devices, they can do a few things. One of the major applications in basic science is that they can tell you whether something in the brain matches or does not match. So if we go back to the coffee, you could, for example, say, I am drinking my coffee with milk and sugar. Okay, so then, at least for the Western listeners, this will be very normal, right? It's the expected thing. You drink it with milk and sugar. But I could also show you a different sentence on a screen. For instance, saying, I am drinking my coffee with milk and curry. Okay, it's like, I just saw your face and you're like, what did he say? So you can measure this exact response. Oh, it doesn't match. There's something wrong about this, within a range of less than a second in the brain with these EEG brain scan devices. And basically what I did was I translated this measure in simplified terms. It was a bit more complicated, but I kind of translated this measure into pricing and said, for example, cup of coffee, 10 cents. It was actually not just a cup of coffee, it was a cup of coffee at Starbucks, so it's branded, it's a specific size, it was a small cup of coffee. Small cup of coffee at Starbucks, 10 cents. What would I get? A mismatch. It's not a good fit. If I say cup of coffee at Starbucks, 10 euros, it's also not a good fit. But if I say cup of coffee at Starbucks, €2.40, €2.60, something like that, suddenly I get a different signal within 500 milliseconds. And that signal shows me now we have a match. It matches the product matches the price, so to say. Okay, so that being said, we went on to use this as a market research tool. Interestingly, maybe as an additional information, Starbucks sold the respective coffee at that moment in time for around €1.80 in downtown Stuttgart, where we made those measures. So that means as a huge gap, people were willing to pay €2.40. That's the perceived value of that product. Starbucks chooses only to charge €1.80.
That's amazing. Yeah. So like you said, you're the inventor of neuropricing. This is like neuroscience coming to the aid of setting benchmarks for the right price. Now that is amazing, because how much trial and error happens in the market to get the price right. And like you were saying, when you want an additional feature, but also to get the right target segment. If there is a target segment that is having more perceived value versus another segment who is not valuing this because of their life stage, life experience, etc. and how you benchmark it, etc. I mean, this is like really mind-blowing in terms of applicability and the value to marketing. So, Kai, would you like to share some? Have we covered all use cases, or are there any specific ones you'd like to mention again?
Let's quickly have a look at a bunch of very cool use cases that I really love. First of all, neuropricing doesn't just measure perceived value, but it also is able to predict how the market will change. So this is something we validated, for example, with Pepsi. The Frito-Lay potato chips division of PepsiCo in Turkey asked us what is going to happen if we raise that price 0.25 Turkish lira. We measured 40 potato chips eaters in Istanbul in Turkey. We also asked them. We modeled the price based on what they said, and we modeled the demand on what the brain said. So now we have two predictions: what people explicitly said and what their brain said. What they explicitly said translated to a total revenue loss of 33% in the entire market. What the brain scan said, the neuropricing EEG prediction, was they're going to lose 9%. They tested it and they actually lost 7%, which is rather close to what the brain scan predicted, but far away from what the questionnaire predicted. There's maybe one more cool thing, because people often think this is a very B2C kind of tool, but indeed we have a lot of B2B examples where we use these where we use neuropricing. And one of my favorite ones is, since I assume there's a bunch of entrepreneurs, salespeople, marketeers listening to this podcast, here's a very cool study that we once ran for a financial services firm. Basically, they sell insurances, and they were wondering, can we change the price of our insurance to above 100 euros per year? And they were like, there's a price threshold and probably we can't do that. So we tested 40 consumers. We said there is no price threshold. You can go above 100 euros. That's fine. They tested that in the market, and it turns out that there was kind of a threshold. So a prediction of the brain research here was kind of not correct. However, you have to understand that this insurance is sold by salespeople, by professional salespeople, clerks that work in a bank. And so we tested 40 salespeople of that same insurance, tested their value perception, and lo and behold, the threshold that 100 euros was an unacceptable price was not in the consumer's mind. It was in the salesperson's mind. It's so crazy, right? So here's just as a few examples of all the cool things you can do with that tool.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I was like, okay, I was getting into science fiction territory. Sorry. I was like, if this could come as a thought blurb, how much will I be willing to pay? Every negotiation you'd win, which way is this going? What impact am I making? I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So Kai, before we'll get to your book and we'll look at all the three wonderful sections you have. You've covered this whole topic in such great depth and with all dimensions. But before that, something that's very topical, and I think audiences would really like to know from the inventor of neuropricing, what does he feel about Elon Musk wanting to charge for Twitter? And what do you feel about his monetization strategy?
Hey, that's a great question. So, first of all, he was planning, or he is still charging around 8 euros. That is, the 8 euros per month is actually not an absurd fee. If you look at what a professional LinkedIn account costs, what professional other services cost, say Amazon Prime, it's somewhere in the normal range. It's all much cheaper than hiring a PR agency to do your PR. So it is not unreasonable. However, you see here a great example of how our minds adapt immediately to certain circumstances. People were used to paying nothing for the blue button, right? And now suddenly they're being charged €8. And now that strikes people as absurd, right? And that is, Elon Musk has a little bit a problem here because he has to live with the mistakes of the former management. Because if you, for example, compare that to LinkedIn, there is a freemium version and it works very well. And then there's for headhunters or other professional marketeers, there's a professional version, and it has different features, and people are happy to pay it. It's just normal. Also, when Amazon Prime introduced Prime, it just became normal. So the big mistake on Elon Musk's side was not really a monetary one, because the fee is kind of reasonable. It is actually more a psychological one. He should have, by all means, also changed the product. There is some sort of feature or some sort of explanation of why this now costs something. As long, and Twitter itself is not a nice place. So people are already a bit, oftentimes there are angry tweets. Twitter is, for venting. And so that is, that doesn't help. This doesn't help it, of course, but he would have had a great chance, because people are locked in to some degree in that platform, right? They're hooked on the platform. They want to use it. And so the right advice from the perspective of consumer psychology would have been, come up with something that justifies the price.
So beautifully explained. There was no context, no benchmark. And like every time, marketers want to increase price, they'll come up with new and improved. At least there's a perception of why you're going to pay more. And like you took examples of LinkedIn, there is an option. So there are additional features. So, your rational mind will totally justify why I'm going for it. I hope Elon Musk is listening.
We should send him a copy of this one.
Definitely. At least this section we'll send him.
Yeah.
Because we do like him. Yeah, he does. He does innovative, pioneering stuff. So, yeah, okay. So this is so interesting, because pricing in the context of invisible aspects at play, like we'll get to your book, Invisible Gains, is not really understood or appreciated in that way. So before we get to that, there's another beautiful evocative imagery is there in one of your articles, where you've talked about, now listen to this, audience, and imagine there is a whole mayhem in Europe, madness, because people are running helter and skelter and like almost trodding each other. Is because there is a 70% off on a chocolate spread. So, in India, we totally get that, Kai. We really get that. We understand discounts, crowds and lot of people makes us believe, yeah, this must be a good thing. So many people are, vying for it. So what is this effect, Kai, which you've said that it's almost like the effect of a drug, discount and free? It gets you addicted. What is this really? How does it work?
Yeah, that was a absolutely absurd scene in France, which maybe the French are the Indians of Europe. I don't know. No, it could have probably happened anywhere. So so there are a few aspects. It's a product that people really love. This chocolate spread on bread, and it doesn't go bad very fast. So you can buy quite a bunch of these chocolate spreads and keep them at home in your basement. That being said, there is a huge neuroscientific body of literature that explains to us how the purchasing decision is being established in the brain and what happens in the brain during this purchasing decision. And one of the seminal work done by Brian Knudsen in Stanford was that he put people in the MRI scanner in a big white machine, and he gave them made them do purchase decisions. Basically, he said, okay, here is a product, I don't know, a box of chocolates, and you can buy this. And then he presented them with a product, looked at their brain activity, he presented them with a price, looked at the brain activity, and people made a decision, I can buy or not, and he looked at the brain activity. It turns out that when people like a product, the nucleus accumbens is activated. Okay, now this is a marketing crowd. Nobody needs to really understand much neuroanatomy about the nucleus accumbens. It's a little brain structure. What is important is that it's a brain structure that is active when we feel good. Indeed, it is also active when you take illegal drugs like cocaine or so. It becomes active. It has been activated in laboratory animals, for example, in rats, that could push a lever to activate electrically the nucleus accumbens. When they activated these pleasure centers in their brain, they were interested in nothing, not in sex, not in eating, not in drinking, because all these things activate your pleasure centers, right? All these things make you feel rewarded. And so, since they could do it directly with a lever, they would just activate these brain regions directly. So the nucleus accumbens, interestingly, is active when you are about to buy a product. And it can only be overridden by the pain centers, the insula, that is also active when you feel pain, so negative emotions, which are then overly active when the price is too high, right? And that is also when then the decision centers are being inactive and people don't buy the product. But of course, this combination of low pain, high pleasure, and hyperactive decisions, that makes people go crazy and run into the store and buy the Neutralla at 70% off. And then they feel like they are getting a kick out of it. Although my hypothesis is, now I don't know too many studies about that, my hypothesis is that this kind of wears off. It's a little bit like, I don't know, like a first, I've never done that, but I assume it's like a first illegal drug shot, right? And then at some point it's just an addiction. So this is what you see with, for example, the fashion industry in Germany and in Europe, and I think in the US probably, I don't know how it's in Asia, but likely similar. Fashion items are now sold, only like around 30% are actually being sold at real price, and about 70%, more than half of the fashion items are being sold at a discounted price. And for people, it's completely normal to say in fashion, if I need new clothes, I'm waiting until they're on discount. So, and if they're not on discount, it actually feels more like painful and less like a pleasurable experience.
Absolutely. So then it just actually meets the case that you're making, because we take a drug and then we develop immunity to it, and then the thinking fast and slow, the fast brain is working lesser and lesser, and now you've started planning and waiting for the sale to happen because it's an annual thing. Let me plan my new wardrobe around that time, and which is very true.
Well, it sounds great if people are running into a store to hit themselves on the head over your product. It sounds funny, and maybe sounds like every marketer's dream. But the reality is, when you do these things, you actually start to habituate your customer and to accustom your customer to these things. So while these are funny stories to be told, my advice to all the marketeers and pricers listening to this podcast is, don't do it. Try to avoid these discounts as much as possible, because all you'll do is you'll train your customers to become bargain hunters. You don't want that.
Yeah. And Kai knows that they're willing to pay much more than they're saying they want. Yeah. Oh,
Indeed.
yeah. So it's the right time to get into the invisible gains. So there are 3 sections, and there are certain themes that will give our audiences the flavor of the aspects that you've covered. What would you like to tell in the beginning about the invisible gains that people start appreciating these themes better?
So, The Invisible Game is a new book, and it's written by my co-author Gabrielle Reebok and myself. And its full title is The Invisible Game, The Secrets and the Science of Winning Minds and Winning Deals. Now, what is that all about? Gabrielle is a sales professional with a background in the chemical industry, and she used to sell huge, something like 3-digit million projects over many, many years in the chemical industry. And she's has an extremely successful career. And at some point, since she happens to be German, she read my first German book which is called Neuropricing. And she said she has tried those things that I describe that are basics from consumer science. So from behavioral pricing, things that I've tested with normal consumers, with coffees, with chocolate bars, with t-shirts and stuff like that. And she's been applying many of these things to establish good relations with buyers and to win her own game in the professional sale. And so we started developing training programs together. We started to develop ideas together and coached hundreds of different people how to use real science in the context of the professional B2B sale. And, it turns out that no matter whether people wear a suit to work or flip-flops to the retailer at home, their mind works the same, right? Indeed, in the professional sale, when a professional key accounter sells to a professional purchaser, there is likely even more irrationality going on. Why is that? Because the professional purchaser, he has additional goals. If I go to the retail store, my goal is to get the best deal for my family and myself. It's a very selfish thing, basically. But that professional buyer, he has also the idea, get the best thing out for his company. But on top, he needs to have the best thing for his career. These things aren't always the same, right? On top, there may be an entire group of buyers, a purchasing group, right? There is a product engineer and a purchaser and some other people that work together, and upper management, they work together to make a decision to buy something. And what we know from group decisions, we know that from social psychology, are actually oftentimes even more irrational and more extreme than individual decisions. You see this in many cases, and a very sad and current example, very current, is that I believe what happens around the world of Vladimir Putin. He seems to be caught up in a group of a few people that take very extreme decisions, even if they are risky and, hurt everybody, including themselves. But this is a good example of where you say that a group comes together and makes an extreme decision that probably, if you asked everybody individually without the group pressure, would be avoided. So that's the big context. And that's the reason why we wrote The Invisible Game, where we reveal how you win minds and how winning minds operate and how you win deals and what winning deals are, winning deals that are one for both, or a winning deal for both the purchaser as well as the salesperson.
Mm-hmm. So in that context, the irrationality, let's remember, audiences, there is a whole lot of things that play, variables, factors that are invisible. Now, how does the salesperson build situational awareness, and why is that important?
Yes. So situational awareness is one of the three big topics of the invisible game, the other two being defense and offense. Basically, the idea goes back to the many psychological models that say that there is something like a conscious and a non-conscious part. Most famously, Daniel Kahneman calls them System 1 and System 2. Others have used the different terms, but in the end, this is a very common psychological theme. So the idea here, System 1, is the fast, the non-conscious, things like fight or flight, right? I'm in a dangerous situation. What do? Do I run away, or do I, oppose the situation? How to act under stress? All these non-conscious things, from breathing to gestures, are all run on System 1. And then there is this conscious part, System 2, which is, what you do your taxes with, what you play chess with, and so forth, and where you don't want to make major mistakes. So here we read that book with our System 2, we try to understand it. But what we really want to do in situational awareness is we want the reader to learn how to train their own System 1. For example, make those non-conscious things conscious, right? Imagine I wanted to sell you something, and you'd be like suddenly getting, gotta clear your throat or so, right? And maybe if I would not be trained, I would ignore that. But if if people are trained and recognize that that is something, maybe the other side, it signifies a problem on the other side, then it's very important to become aware of that, right? And to become aware of situational issues, to become aware of my own fallacies, my own heuristics, my own biases, and also to become aware of the other side's biases. And basically making the non-conscious conscious for whoever reads the invisible game, or whoever knows how to play it or understands how to play it. That is the idea here. And
very,
if you want to, I can come up with an example.
Do share an example, because I think this is the most powerful factor in going for anything. This is so powerful that the non-conscious has been made conscious, whether it's a bias or a hypothesis or a belief system. But it's easier said than done. Would you want to share an example of how much of a difference it can make?
Let's take the example of anchoring. Anchoring is a very, very powerful tool. Why is anchoring so powerful? And what does anchoring mean? Anchoring, first of all, means that if we are not sure about a number, then we are looking for something to anchor that number on, which is why it's called an anchor. So, and prices are even worse. Our evolutionary designed mind has there is no evolutionary pressure that has ever been a selection pressure to say associate a product with a number. That is nothing we needed ever. So now it's a very new thing for our brains, and we're looking for something to hold on to. Let's say a purchaser comes and says, I want 30%. I want a 30% discount, right? And then you talk about it and you think about it. You maybe talk to your other sales friends about it, and you let that anchor sink in more and more. That in the end, you negotiate back and forth and get this down to a 20% discount. You are very happy. And this is very strange. You shouldn't be happy because you've totally played the purchaser's game, right? What would be much better in situational awareness would be to say, I anticipate this coming. I have to anchor that other side myself. For example, I have to say, there's inflation going on currently. We need to go up 10%. Sorry, everything has gone up. We need to go up 10%, Then you anchor them. And unless they are totally situationally aware of that and can completely block out that that perception and that complete new re-referencing of the number, they're suddenly playing your invisible game and playing the game according to the rules that you have set. And then you have achieved a lot using situational awareness.
Awesome. But just the fact, we're going to get into the defense part. Like you said, there are 3 sections. After situational awareness, we're going to talk about the defense and certain themes there. But just the fact that you made it, you've taken the context, the frame of reference of a game itself makes it so, let's play it. Even if we lose, what do we need to learn more? How do we do it better next time? It's very interesting, Kai. So
I love that. Yes, I thanks for the praise. It's actually quite it's actually a cool observation. Yes, indeed.
Okay, so playing defense. So you have the power of no, and price is equal to maths plus story. So which one do you want to take first? Would you like to take both? How do you want to go about it? I'll leave it up to you.
Let's think about the power of no for a second, because we have introduced long-standing research that, to my knowledge, has not been really gotten the attention it deserves in the business world. The research by Robert Zients. So Robert Zients studied something called social facilitation. And what he did was basically he put people, and in some cases even animals, under social pressure. So made other people watch them or made other animals watch them, and then see how they would perform in simple tasks and in hard tasks. And it turns out that when you are put under pressure by other people watching you, for example, you perform better on the easy task, right? So 100-meter race, you will usually be faster when you know that, thousands of people are screaming in the stadium. Whereas solve a complicated math problem and there's 1,000 people screaming at you in the stadium, it will make you so excited that you are over the top and you are not psyched up, but you're psyched out. And this idea of being either psyched up or psyched out is an important one, and that is, I think, is that it didn't get enough attention in the business literature so far. Now, the cool thing about that is that if you have really trained your mind to do certain things, it becomes automated, and you do become better at it when you're under stress. And if you are asked for a discount, oftentimes you're under stress. So if you got used to making no your habitual response, your response that comes automatically, that comes from your system 1, you are on much better turf psychologically than if you do what our evolutionary heritage does tell us, to make a concession and say yes. So that's the power of no. And if we learn to make no our primary response, our initial easy response that we give, if whether we are psyched up or whether we are psyched out, then we have already gained a lot, because a no can always be turned into a yes. If you say yes, I give you a discount, you can turn it back to a no and say, oh, I made a mistake. I didn't want to give you a discount. That I've never heard. So it is absolutely critical to start with a no and then buy time to think, and afterwards do the right thing. And if it is giving a discount, at least you bought time and designed the discount probably in the right way.
Yeah, awesome. And Kai, and I don't know, does it also work in case of the human tendency and in terms of dealing with a temptation? If like it's no, it's like
Mhm,
saying no is difficult, but
mhm,
because your compulsive reaction is tends to be yes, and maybe some reward system is linked to it. But if you
mhm.
train yourself not to get psyched out,
Yeah.
and you can start with a no, buy time, and then really kick your system too into evaluating that, oh, this is really not going to help me. Like I told myself last time, I'm not going to do this. On that
Yes.
note, we go to the second theme in playing defense. Price is equal to maths plus story.
Yes. So this, I guess, will resonate with many of the listeners here, right? If you have a good story around your product, if it's convincing, right, then you still gotta see, does it cover your cost? You still gotta see, does it make up for all the effort? But in the end, that's what your price is going to be about, and the price you can achieve, the feel good price, the Goldilocks price, that is very much determined by your story around your brand, and by also the math. Let's take that example. It's a bit of a consumerish example, but anyway, if you want to have an extra finish on a car, there are different blacks, right, depending on the specific car brand, right, as spacey black or midnight black or shiny black or whatever. Yeah, and depending on which kind of black you take, it can easily cost 500 euros or 1,000 euros more, right? It's just shiny versus not so shiny black. But the issue is, here is a big story, that's put around that, like midnight black, whatever, midnight black metallic, whatever. And it's the story that the car company creates around that color that makes people be willing to pay 500 euros more than they would pay otherwise. So that's and here is the math is very good for the car company, because it pays just like 5 euros more for that advanced color. So in that case, we have really this idea of math. Price is math plus story, where you create a story around something, and then you can really make up for other things. And we also see another thing, that another story that plays a role in this example, and that is, you start to perceive this as these 500 euros that you pay on top. You start to perceive them as irrelevant in the context of buying a 70,000 euro car. It sounds like nothing, right? But imagine 500 euros is a lot in any other context, right? In any other context, you would be not saying, hey, whatever, those 500 euros, I don't care about them, right? As long as I get the nice story of the nice color around it. And that's where you see that these two things play a big role. It's relativity and the story, and the math behind it. And the math in this case is a very good one for the car brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kai, as you were talking, so car is a high purchase, conspicuous item. You're gonna get a
Mm-hmm.
lot of gratification from it. Imagine soaps, premium segment, mid segment, economy segment,
Mm-hmm.
detergent powders, sometimes outsourced from the same manufacturer, but just with a different story or like a branding context,
Mm-hmm.
the sheen that communication has taken on.
Yeah.
And you convince a different segment of customer that you're right for them and they should pay this much for it. So all on the basis of
Yeah, but yes, but the funny thing is, this story plays back to the customer again. So if you take a shower with that soap and you believe the story, you will be going out into society with more confidence, and with a different feeling, So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Where we also see this in the context of price is a math and story. We see this in taste. So, for example, if I tell you this is an expensive bottle of wine, or this is a very expensive hot chocolate handpicked by the organic farmers or something like that, and I compare that to a normal product, it will taste better, right? And that I can even do this blind. So I can do it in a blind test and give you twice the same wine or twice the same hot chocolate. And it has been done in brain scanners that actually sensorial areas of the brain were more active when the price was higher. That means the story and the price around the product that created a better taste sensation. And it's really crazy how price becomes a sensorial experience.
Yeah, like you mentioned in your book. Can you taste the price or something?
Yes, can you taste the price? Exactly. Can you taste the price? How did that price taste?
How did that price taste? It's so interesting that that the very stories that are getting played in our brains have been harnessed by the marketer, played back to us, and then after using that very product, we are, making us feel the placebo of, getting the gratification that we needed. That's awesome. Oh God.
Exactly.
We sound so silly, man. I'm saying human beings. But you need these stories, what to do. Okay.
Yeah. It's I think as a psychologist, it doesn't sound that absurd, but it's funny, right? It really works. It works very well.
Yeah, we can't exist without stories. I mean, that's the fact. So some story we'll choose. It can't be vacuum. Okay. So third section, playing offense and the powers of influence. And then we go to power of free and power of now. So how you want to talk about it? Yes.
Mm-hmm. So the third part in the invisible game is that we can also actively shape the entire deal, and we can actively shape proposals and see how proposals work out. So, for example, we have the power to design the choices that in the end purchaser makes. I'll give you a very extreme example for how to design a choice. And that is the case of organ donations. Organ donations in European countries are either that nearly everybody is an organ donor, or nearly no one is an organ donor. Organ donor means, in that respect, right, if you're really brain dead, you have had an accident, you're brain dead, the doctors can use your heart and your liver to help someone in need. And most people kind of think that is okay that's an okay thing. And if somebody doesn't want that, they can always not choose not to be an organ donor. But why is there a distribution of countries that have very few donors and a distribution of countries that have a lot of donors? That is because in those countries where there's a lot of donors, there it is that you are a donor, but you have to actively just write a letter or make a check mark when you get your driving license or so, saying, I don't want to be an organ donor. In the other countries, it's exactly the other way around, right? You are not an organ donor, but you've got to write a letter or register to become an organ donor. It turns out nobody does that, or hardly anybody does that. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the decision to be an organ donor which is very, it's not a silly thing, a random thing. It's irrelevant. No, it's something that's important to us. That decision resides largely within the choice architecture that is imposed upon us by some political ideal, right? And so here you see that how you frame something, frame it as opt-in or opt-out, that has a huge influence in many cases on whether people will do it or will not do it, whether people will buy your product or will not buy your product. And so another cool issue that you can work with in terms of choice architectures is the power of 3. So you can, in that case, when you say you, for example, write a consulting proposal or write a major B2B proposal, you can give someone 3 choices and say something like good, better, best. And since for people it's hard to grasp what that is worth, imagine you are an advertiser, maybe, right? If you're an advertiser, well, what is advertising worth it? It's very hard to tell. Well, what does an advertiser cost, right? I can go to many people, but in the end, I got to make a decision. They're all somewhat more or less reasonably priced and more or less good. But so which one do I take? So if you have good chances to win the deal, if you say I have a good, better, best, and make, for example, the middle choice the very attractive one, right? Include a lot of features and make for example, the expensive one look rather very expensive. Also use anchoring and make the lower one just slightly cheaper, but significantly worse in terms of what you offer. And that way people will say, oh, now I have an internal reference. That one's rather expensive. That one's rather not a good value. So I'll take that one with good value for money, right? Of course, it can all be designed by whatever you want to sell. So that means in this case, you can play offense and, design the choice and influence the deal to your advantage, which is hopefully also the customer's advantage.
Yeah. So clearly, it's not just a number. You're helping your consumer interpret it, contextualize it, and making the decision easier. In the first case, it's like when you make it the default, cognitive effort is lesser, and it's like a quick, easy decision. In the second case, also, they don't have to go here and there, search, figure out. You've anchored it for them to interpret that, okay, this one definitely is better than this and this. So, okay, easy. Yeah, I think that's one. Yeah.
Indeed, and maybe quickly to add to that, this is exactly right. And why do we say the power of 3? It's because exactly what you just said, we make it easy for the mind, right? Because actually the mind wants to feel like it makes a decision, you make a decision, but your mind actually does not like a decision. So it's not the power of 30, it's the power of 3. If you give your customer 30 options, you're very likely to lose the deal because it's just way too much, right? And there's also lots of evidence for when people have too many choices, something called choice paralysis kicks in and you're not doing anything in the end.
Yeah. Absolutely. This is, I mean, there's so much more, Kai, but definitely we cannot go on. So guys, pick up the book. You want to understand the dimensions and the variables and the factors at play, the invisible gains in pricing and in negotiation and in dealing. Yeah, look at the book here.
It is, for those of you who have the video cast, right?
Yeah. Yes. It is quite invisible.
Intentionally.
Intentionally. So Kai,
I've heard about it, but I was curious to see what it's going to look like.
Yeah, you have to experience it. I hope you're not psyched out, only psyched up.
Let's see.
Super. Let's go for it. Okay.
Shoot.
Mother's best advice.
Choose your battles.
Ah,
Prioritize what's important.
got it. Got it. Alternate profession could have been?
A pediatrician.
What would you
Doctor
do
with
on-
kids, I think.
Mm.
Don't shoot. Don't shoot.
Oh, you reminded me. Okay. What would you do on Mars for fun?
Jump and run.
As per your partner, your most often used phrase.
My partner, most often phrases, I love you.
Hey. Okay, this was system 2.
Yes, there's a system 2. Well,
Okay.
you know, for my students it's that's exam relevant.
Yeah. Makes them happy too. Okay,
Yes.
one thing no one knows about you.
One thing no one knows. I'm a business school professor, but I never took a single class in business in college.
Okay, a book you'd like to gift to all your friends, and it can't be your own.
The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins.
What's your favorite childhood memory?
Skiing and being outside in the woods.
Okay, if you were to devote the rest of your life to philanthropy, what cause would you choose?
Oh, going back to the woods, it would be species and habitat protection.
What is your greatest joy?
Is going on podcasts.
Okay, like to hear that. How would you like strangers to remember you?
Well, whatever. He wasn't the guy that shot me with a crazy gun.
What is a lesson that took you a long time to learn?
Entrepreneurship is about balancing the right risks.
Okay. What is one missed opportunity you wish you could have a second chance at?
Learning how to computer code at the age of 6.
Oh my God. What's next?
Maybe a book on neuropricing in English.
Yay. Kai, it's a wrap up. I'd request you to share your online address, email, anything you want to say about your book. All this will be there in the show notes as well, but please share it with our audiences.
Sure. If you want to get in touch with me, I am active on LinkedIn. So please link in with me. Please follow me on LinkedIn. I'm occasionally posting on topics all revolving around psychology, negotiations, pricing, the brain, and a bit of basic brain research. And I'll be happy to hear from you. Just don't be shy. Just get in touch with me or just link in with me. If you are interested in running brain scans of whatever sort, I have sold my brain scan tools and algorithms to a company called Neurensics based in Amsterdam. I am on board there. If you want to work with me or with any of my fabulous colleagues in Amsterdam and are interested in anything related to neuroscience and business, we are the place to go to. It's called Neurensics in Amsterdam, and I'm also on the website there on top. And well, in case you want to book me for a speaking engagement or so, you can also go to www.kai-markus-mueller.com. I'm very, very thankful for being on this podcast. It was a great experience.
Thank you. It was great hosting you, Kai. And do stay in touch. Stay jagged, as they say it.
Exactly. Stay jagged, everyone. And listen to more Jagged with just Ravi.
Yeah.